Hello, everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar. This is the Friday show that reviews the most media news stories of the week. I'm your host, Marcus Johnson. In today's show, can TV get big again?
It really does have to have more creative license and not be constrained by the kind of old school, either half-hour sitcom or one-hour drama cut up into chunks that are broken up by commercials.
Why Warby Parker is eyeing bricks and mortar.
And it's this idea that we've been talking about for a very long time around all channel. Every channel is important. And when they need to get their glasses fixed, they go to the store. But when they're just figuring out what they want, they can go online. And it all sort of works together in one ecosystem.
How folks find things to stream.
If an algorithm establishes that you really like one particular genre, they're not going to be able to personalize to a degree much deeper than showing you everything they have available in that genre. But I think if you opened it up and there was a third-party application that could look at all of what's available on streaming, that could be a really good opportunity to create a different experience.
TikTok hits 1 billion users. The new corporate dress code and greeting etiquette. And why American football plays are called the way they are. All right, folks, joining me for this episode are you, the listeners. Thanks for hanging out. And also 3 other people. Let's meet them. We have one of our principal analysts covering retail and e-commerce. It's Susie David Canyon.
Hey, everyone.
Hello there, miss. We're also joined by one of our analysts on that same retail and e-commerce team. It's Blake Drosch.
Hey, everybody.
Hello there, sir. And finally, we have Paul Werner, who is our principal analyst covering TV and video.
Great to be here as always.
Hello, chap. So, they're the 3 people we have for you today. What are we talking about? Well, 4 quarters as per usual. The first quarter is the story of the week. We're talking about whether TV can get big again. We then move to the game of the week where our contestants, Susie, Blake, and Paul, will go head to head, try and give us the best takeaway they possibly can from each of the 4 stories we have for you. We then move to the third quarter where we talk about working from somewhere and what that's like. We're talking about the new corporate dress code and greeting etiquette. And finally, dinner party data is our final quarter of the show, same as always. So, story of the week is where we begin. As per usual, can TV get big again? Asks James Panivazic of the Wall Street Journal. He writes that in spring 2019, as Game of Thrones aired its final season, the question among TV industry pundits was, is this the last big blockbuster TV series ever that would dazzle and focus the obsession of a mass audience? Can any one program that's not live sports or news in an age of binging, streaming, and thousands of choices bring together a huge audience? The pandemic bolstered TV's status as Tiger King became a TV event. If theater's strength is to bring audiences together, TV's is to bring audiences together apart. So this was his article, James' article from the New York Times. Paul, I'll start with you because you cover TV and video for us. Can TV get big again? And will there be another big TV event that's not sports or news?
Well, I think the answer depends partly on how you define TV. And if you're looking at streaming combined with linear TV or cable, or you're looking at something that can cut across those platforms, then I don't see why there couldn't be another sort of like big, show that unifies those audiences. It really comes down to, how compelling is it? I mean, I could see if Breaking Bad came out today and it were on a platform where you could both stream it and watch it, through cable, it could be something that everybody talked about in the same way as they might with, Game of Thrones or Mandalorian or any of the other recent hits.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if there needs to be. Does there need to be another big TV event?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the makers of Ted Lasso are quite happy where they are with, being on Apple TV, and however you define or measure a hit these days, which is very ambiguous. They got 20 Emmy nominations and won several of them, and they're in the zeitgeist of what people are talking about. So, I think that's the modern definition of a TV hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that, from a creative standpoint, there are plenty of reasons not to want to be on cable, whether it's the limitations that you have from studios based on, ratings and things like that, not being able to, swear and have violence, but also not having to cut a show for commercials, which really kind of makes, from a creative standpoint, it sort of makes the big difference between a lot of the, HBO and streaming hits over the last 20 years that we've seen versus the cable hits, which have largely been sitcoms, which are conducive to things like ad breaks and don't necessarily need to have content that's, could be not for the general airwaves. And that's why I think that, when you think of what are big hits and like highly anticipated shows right now, they're all basically existing on streaming platforms. And I think the interesting thing will be what a platform like HBO will be able to do in order to bring forth the next hit TV show, because they've really, going all the way back to like The Sopranos, have had sort of a landmark television show. And I guess you could say Succession is probably that right now. But I think the competition is a lot stiffer because we have these platforms that allow the creative freedom that traditionally a channel like HBO only had.
Yeah, when I talked about the convergence in this particular instance, I meant more with premium cable like HBO, where you don't have the same obligations to, to have commercial breaks or even, language and content that you would on basic cable. So yeah, I think like a show that might be available on HBO and HBO Max would be a good example. But I think clearly in order to rise to the level of just getting so many people to talk about something and focus on it, it really does have to have more creative license and not be constrained by the kind of old school, either half-hour sitcom or 1 hour drama cut up into chunks that are broken up by commercials.
But I also think that all the blockbusters that the author talked about were all sci-fi-esque, and they were shared experiences that I didn't actually watch Game of Thrones, but I feel like I participated in that shared experience. So I think there's also this like marketing gimmick that goes with some of these TV shows. Like I don't have Apple TV, as everybody knows. I don't have an Apple phone, but I know all about Ted Lasso, and I know that the last episode just aired and everybody flocked to their TV to watch it. So I feel like sometimes these shared experiences aren't even actually shared. They're just part of the ethos of our society.
Susie, I don't know about the rest of the listeners, but you lost me at I've not watched Game of Thrones.
I haven't watched it either.
No, I haven't either.
So Paul is this week's winner of the Game of the Week.
Paul just said he hasn't seen it either.
I'm more of a bachelorette kind of viewer
Nice,
myself.
Paul. I like it.
There it is. One other interesting thing from the article was that the content's changing. Movie content is changing. Disney Plus, it says, has showed that the way to fit big screen universes into packages that worked for serial TV was to make them intimate, conversational, or relatively quiet, rather than 2 hours of movie house pyrotechnics, talking about a movie moving towards a TV-centric entertainment future, going on to say it was not that long ago that the appearance of a Star Wars or superhero entertainment was a rare treat. Now it's a Wednesday. Is this a concern? Is there any kind of devaluing of their IP if people just kind of get used to these characters and they're no longer big events?
I don't think so, because more and more the revenue streams are going to come from streaming, and we're already seeing a great disruption to the theatrical industry. Part of it born by the pandemic, but part of it was something that was happening before and is going to continue to happen afterwards. So I don't know if you can really talk about devaluing. I think people just experience these franchises in a different way, and that increasingly means watching them at home or playing a game that's based on them or engaging with them on social media. But it's less now about like going to the theater for that big premiere than it is about just being connected to the brand through all these different distribution points.
You could argue that they're trying to maybe acquaint you better with these characters because, Paul, to your point, they're going to be more characters that you hang out with every other day at home as opposed to go and see once a year in the movies.
Yeah, I think a lot of these movies, they originated as comic books, which have been, which is a serialized form of media. So in a way, it's sort of just like reverting back to that, but through film.
I do think it's going to change the margins of these different studios as they think about compensation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're already seeing that with the whole Scarlett Johansson thing with Disney. And yeah, I mean, the economics are changing, and that goes both for the talent and the studios behind all this content.
And also for retail, because a lot of the toys, especially around the holiday season, are based on some of these big blockbuster movies. And now all of a sudden, if that doesn't exist, those properties don't exist, that impacts retail sales too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but I would think that from a retail standpoint, even if these properties don't exist in the traditional kind of like event, movie type of way, they still exist in terms of, you have Netflix basically launching a retail line based on Stranger Things and other shows of theirs. So I think the end product of a popular TV and or film franchise is always going to be some kind of retail phenomenon, or, whether it's toys or dolls or games or anything else.
Totally. But I think just for kids' toys, though, the anticipation and the excitement of something opening with so much fanfare just might change the economics a tiny little bit.
Another article we're reading for this was focusing on how we're watching TV content, movie content. I was asking, are we binging less? It was an advanced TV piece saying that there's been a decrease in TV binging, notes consumer research platform Attest, pointing to people going back outside as a major reason binge watching of both live TV and streaming content has seen market declines. The share of Netflix users engaging in 5-hour plus binging sessions on streaming platforms is down from 26% in 2020 to just 12% this year. More Americans also stopped watching live TV for more than 6 hours. This year's 9% versus last year's 19%. Who did so. They also found that 18% of folks say they now watch no live TV in 2021 versus 14% in 2020. Any thoughts, folks, on binging habits?
I have a technical question. If you're watching TV from the ABC app, for example, is that considered, and it's technically live, like you're watching the 6 o'clock news, but through the app, is that considered live TV or is that not considered live?
I'll throw that to Paul.
I think it depends on the survey. I don't think there's a set way that, that the industry overall views that. I think when research companies ask that question, it's not always uniform in terms of, how they phrase it and how people interpret it. So,
yeah Paul, this kind of gets at what you're constantly saying about when we're talking about TV, particularly pay TV. Everything's kind of pay TV. What do we really mean? Are we talking about any content that's inside of a television? Are we talking about cable satellite? We're talking about YouTube TV that you technically pay for. So it definitely starts to become a definition issue. NPD Group was saying TV and movies taking up 30% of US entertainment time at the moment. And also another interesting stat, streaming TV overtaking live TV, apparently, for the first time since the Attest report launched in 2019. They suggest that the proportion of Americans who watch streaming TV content, 83%, surpass those who watch live TV, 81% on a daily basis. I looked at our numbers, though. We have American video viewers spending 3 hours and 15 minutes watching digital video. That's less than the near 4 hours that TV viewers spend watching TV. However, by 2023, TV will be ahead of digital video by only 5 minutes. That's among people who do those activities. Final thing I'll say here, this was going to be part of my dinner party data, but it's relevant to this moment, so I'll throw it in now. LG now makes a TV that costs just $1.7 million. They announced a new lineup of direct view LED home cinema displays, which range in size from a huge 108-inch HD screen to a more obscene 325-inch 8K 2,000-pound panel that cost an insane $1.7 million, according to CNET. Why? That's a good question. So you can watch the Rams football game on one third, BBC News on the other, and then the Lakers basketball highlights on the other third.
If you pay that much money for your TV, you better be binging many, many hours a day and skewing those statistics right back the other way.
And it's definitely not BBC because it's 1 in 3 people are watching the news, which is kind of scary if you think about it.
1 in 3 people are watching news?
According to that article.
Which article?
The one, the TV viewer habits, the 5-hour plus binging.
Oh, is that part of the Attest research?
Yes.
Oh, come on, humans. Get it together. That's what we've got time for the story of the week. It's time now for the game of the week, but first, quick word from our sponsor. It's New Star. Are you prepared for marketing's next chapter? You wouldn't want to miss Brave New World's 2021, the virtual marketing and analytics event of the year. on November 9th and 10th. Join Brave New Worlds to learn how you can adapt to the forces redefining advertising. It's free, and you'll hear from today's top minds in marketing, data, and analytics, including executives from Facebook, General Motors, Capgemini, Publicis, and more. Head to bravenewworlds.newstar to sign up. All right, folks, we are back. It's time now for the game of the week. Today's game. What's the point? The part of the show where we read out full stories and have our contestants, Susie, Blake, and Paul, tell us what they think is the main takeaway of the story. Okay answers will get you 1 point. Good answers will get you 2. And you just beat your brother last week at fantasy football level answers. That feeling, that'll get you 3 points. Each person gets 20 seconds to answer before they hear. I haven't even put the bell together. Sorry, I've been moving around. Give me a second. I've got to build it again.
You have to build it?
What, are you in Philadelphia and the bell cracked or something?
I could just say bing. Ready? I'm just going to be the bell. Bing.
Okay.
I haven't put it together. It's in the bag.
Do I need to get my bell, the cappuccino funnel bell? You remember that one?
No.
Okay.
Yes, I remember it. You went rogue last time. Put it away. Each person gets 20 seconds before they hear bing. Whoever has the most points after 4 rounds. I sound like Janice from Friends when she's Chandler Bing. For 4 rounds, there's points. There's not points. Let's just play the game. Anyway, first story. We start with Paul. Why Warby is eyeing bricks and mortar. D2C glasses brand Warby Parker launched its first store in Manhattan's Soho neighborhood. They now have over 140 retail locations in cities and malls across the country, notes a Wall Street Journal video. They plan to have added another 30 stores by the end of 2021, continuing at that pace in years to come. Paul, Warby's focus on bricks and mortar, what's the point?
I think the main reason for that is that when you wear glasses, you need to have them adjusted, and there's no way to do that online. There's no way to do it yourself. You need someone in front of you looking at you, making sure they're straight, just slightly bending it a little bit to get it right. And I don't know of any other way to do that.
Bing! Susie.
Your bell is awesome.
Thank you.
So I have a different perspective maybe on Warby Parker because it is one of the digital native brands that started, but it is also one of the quintessential examples of why stores are so important. And in that video, they even talk about how 50% of their own sales are coming from online in store. And it's this idea that we've been talking about for a very long time around all channel. Every channel is important. Consumers shop where they want, when they want. And when they need to get their glasses fixed, they go to the store. But when they're just figuring out what they want, they can go online. And it all sort of works together in one ecosystem.
Bing! Blake.
Yeah, exactly. It's the stores are for getting your eye exam, for trying on more than 5 different pairs, for getting glasses readjusted, but the at-home offering is so you can spend more time looking at yourself in the frames without feeling like an idiot in the store. And also, once you go to the store and you have everything sort of established, then the digital experience is something that you can continue to engage with that will just have you more likely to buy more and more pairs of glasses as your information and your preferences are already sort of stored from establishing them physically. So it's sort of a 360, very comprehensive offering.
Bing. As per usual, as is tradition, Blake starts off with a yellow card.
Yeah,
Bing,
but there doesn't
Is
matter.
that good?
So who cares?
It's not a good thing, no.
Wait, is
Nah, I
yellow
guess-
card good or bad?
It's like soccer.
warning.
It's
If
a
you
penalty.
get 2 yellows, you get
Is that for
disqualified.
Yeah.
time? Delay of
Was that
game?
Paul?
Who cares? So I don't even. The only thing I know. The only reason why I know what a yellow card is because I get them on this show. I don't even.
Yeah.
No, I know what a yellow card is, but I watch soccer and my nieces and nephew play soccer, but I don't understand why it has anything to do with a game.
Oh, nothing has anything to do with anything when we play
Got
this.
it. That's why
It's
I
just,
never win.
A warning to Blake that he might get disqualified if he runs long enough.
Oh man, what will I do?
Can I say one more thing about
same
Warby
thing.
Parker, though?
Yes.
So what I think is also important is what Paul was saying in terms of you want to go try it on. And so originally, Warby Parker had very few SKUs very, very few SKUs. That's why it worked online. And now if you go into the store, it's packed with stuff. And they've tried to recreate each store to be similar to the environment that they're in. So no two store is the same, but it is no longer the original, very narrow SKU count, which is why you need to go to the store even more.
It's a good point, but I'm throwing a yellow flag. Delay of game on Susie, 15-yard penalty, 15-point penalty. We move on. Wait, I've got a few points on this, actually, from the video I thought was interesting. Total orders for Warby Parker have grown each of the last few years, but they're still not profitable, booking a net loss of 56 million last year against revenue of nearly 400 million. They don't care as much about overall store profitability, though, seeing them more as building customer relationships or street-level billboards, as the video described them. In terms of overall glasses, about less than 1% of glasses purchases were happening online in 2010. Today, 8%. Move to our second story. We start with Susie. Why advertising's future is in 3D. For years, ads and their touch points have been delivered on a flat plane. Whether outdoor, TV, or even digital banners, creators only really needed to worry about one side of the placement, the side facing the consumer, writes Head of Futures at Omnicom Media Group UK, Phil Rowley. In the 2000s, it was about digitization of existing traditional media. In the 2020s, it will be about virtualization with objects, people, places, and structures volumetrically scanned and uploaded into a dimensionalized internet. Mr. Rowley thinks brands will soon have to think about their assets in Z space, a third dimension, with their products and services viewed from all angles and able to be picked up and played with, Z being X, Y axis, and then Z being a third one. Think less about the metaverse, he suggests, and instead about the alternative term, the 3D open web, which is perhaps more fitting. Susie, why advertising's future is in 3D? What's the point?
So I think it's an interesting way of thinking about consumer experiences. And I know a lot of retailers and brands are trying to think through, and quick service restaurants, Burger King just did those non-fungible tokens. It's a really neat, that's a technical term, neat way of making sure that consumers are feeling, especially last year when they were at home most of the time, are feeling like they're embraced in the brand experience. What I thought was interesting in his article was that he doesn't like the word metaverse. Meanwhile, it's everywhere right now, and he's trying to change the vocabulary around this idea of 3D.
Bing, Blake.
Yeah, I don't think that 3D is really going to be like necessary to advertising until consumers are regularly consuming, 3D media, which is really like all not that popular right now. And the fact that like we're going to be almost 2 years into the decade soon leads me to believe that we're not really going to reach that critical mass before this decade's over. And I don't think it's really going to be super relevant for advertisers until then.
Bing, Paul.
I'm skeptical about the use of AR and VR in advertising and marketing as a mainstream channel, but I do think there are certain applications, for example, like trying on clothes and getting them to fit right. If you can do that in a sort of modeled 3D way, or even trying on your glasses, I think that could actually be something that catches on.
Bing. The article notes that online retailers like Ford and Tesco are incorporating rotatable views of products online, but these remain on a flat plane on a website. He says we'll move to interactive 3D worlds like Roblox and Fortnite. Our third story, we start with Blake, how folks find things to stream. Content discovery challenges are consistently cited as one of the top drawbacks of the streaming experience, notes Media Post's Carleen Lukovitz. She points to a June Conviva study by Dynata of 2,500 adults that looked at how folks actually go about discovering content. It found that general word of mouth was the top discovery source, 59%, followed by ads, 52%, social media, 49%, and streaming service recommendations, 43%. To zoom in further, if you exclude word of mouth, the top sources were discovered by chance, 38%, TV ads, 34%, family and friends recommendations, 30%, streaming service recommendations, 28%, in-person conversations, 27%, media reviews, 21%, and social media ads or conversations with friends on social media, 20%. Blake, how folks find things to stream, what's the point?
See, I think like word of mouth is always going to be popular for those, hit shows and establishing these hit shows. But I actually think there is an opportunity here for someone to come along and create an algorithm that becomes really good at personalizing suggestions, and you can toggle on and off which, streaming services you have access to like filter that out. Because even though the individual services have massive libraries and they have algorithms of their own to base their recommendations on, I feel like it's almost still, they still can't offer everything, right? If an algorithm establishes that you really like one particular genre, they're not going to be able to personalize to a degree much deeper than showing you everything they have available in that genre. But I think if you opened it up and there was a third-party application that could look at all of what's available on streaming, that could be a really good opportunity to create a different experience that isn't just serving recommendations based on what the streaming service has to offer that month.
Bing, orange card issued to
What's
Blake.
that?
For those wondering what orange means, it's between yellow and red. He's not quite disqualified, but it's pretty close.
I'm
Blake,
colorblind, so yellow
that was
and
the
orange
longest
basically
answer
look
ever.
the same to me, so it doesn't really matter.
Paul, you're up.
I agree with Blake. I think that, the Netflixes of the world have gotten very good at recommending things that are in their system, but increasingly as viewing gets more fragmented and we subscribe to 5, 6, 7, or 8 services, what we want as consumers is somebody to recommend to us, what should I watch tonight? Not what should I watch on Netflix or Amazon or Peacock or Hulu or whatnot.
Bing, Susie.
I love that, and I completely agree. I think that the trick will be like, what if they ask me to watch something on Apple and I don't have Apple, and then all of a sudden is it pay as you go? What I found super cool about this particular article was I had never thought about the blurring of word of mouth that I traditionally thought of as what we learned in school when you were a lot back in the day, versus today where social media sort of plays like a word of mouth component, even though it's not technically a word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. Bing. Move to our final story. We start with Paul. TikTok hits 1 billion users. The short video app now has over 1 billion monthly active users. TikTok became the most downloaded app in the world in Q1 2020. It was also the most downloaded non-game app in August of 2021, according to analytics firm Sensor Tower, and that's Alison Prang of the Wall Street Journal. Paul, TikTok just hit 1 billion users. What's the point?
I think this is a pretty big story, and Axios did a chart of different social media platforms and how long they took to get to 1 billion, and most of them took longer. I think the fact that TikTok got there so quick is pretty significant when you think about, like Facebook, YouTube, and various of the Facebook properties. It did take longer, and also Snapchat, I guess, isn't even there. So yeah, pretty big deal.
Bing, Susie.
I don't know that I can talk about this because I didn't know that WhatsApp was considered a social media platform, and it's on that chart that Paul was just talking about. What I would like to say is, TikTok, if you're listening, I would like a fast forward button on your videos because sometimes they're too long, even though they're 1 minute.
You're taking this opportunity to just vent about what you want them to include feature set wise.
I just downloaded TikTok this week because I felt like I needed to finally download it, and I am sucked into it in a way that is very hard to understand, and I can't even tell, and I'm an adult, which is an ad and which is a real thing. And I don't know a lot of these pop stars, so I don't know which is like real pop star versus which is like a fake person trying to be cool. It's just very confusing for me, and I would like to fast forward.
Susie, what's happening?
I know, please delete that part.
Yellow card for Susie for not talking about anything related to the story. Blake, you're up. Bing.
I just want to say that if Susie downloaded TikTok just this week, is it possible that she was the 1 billionth user? And if so, then she should be contacted by TikTok and given some sort of
Contacted
prize.
and compensated. Yep, for sure.
Like
So
a
we
fast
should look
forward
into
button.
that. But I do think that it's very impressive because it's not just about, with TikTok, it's not just the fact that they have 1 billion users, it's that the time spent seems to be so high, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but seems to be so high in the app, and I would imagine that they probably achieved the level of time spent just as quickly. But I will caveat Paul's point, which I do, it's really impressive how quickly they went to 1 billion, but I think that we're just such a social media inclined society that the next viral social media app that comes along is probably going to reach 1 billion even faster.
Agreed.
Yeah. Bing.
I think it's going to be Flip.
Huh?
Do you guys
Okay.
know
I've
about this
never
one?
even heard of Flip.
No.
Oh my God, am I ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I think
You are.
we have to edit this out. I
Well,
always
it's
love
not-
to be ahead of the curve.
I'm feeling really good. I think I'm winning twice now.
Wait, but is this an actual thing that's going to get big? Because otherwise,
I think so.
you're okay.
It's
What is it?
technically like TikTok for beauty. So it might not get super big because already...
Oh, you're already walking back your statement.
Well,
Susie.
no, because I feel like if we think about gender norms, then potentially there's a population that doesn't really necessarily think about beauty necessarily quite in the same way. And so I feel like already you might not be, and all the young kids that don't need beauty. So I feel like it's not for everybody necessarily. So already that'll make it less quick to get to 1 billion. But I do think that the people who are on it seems to me like they are on it a lot, and hopefully it brings about a lot of purchases.
Mm-hmm. Two things from me real quick. Sarah Fisher of Axios, as Paul mentioned, TikTok taking 5 years to reach 1 billion users. The only major platform to reach that milestone faster was Facebook Messenger, but they benefited massively from having a little bit of Facebook name recognition.
Like WhatsApp, it's not a social network.
It's not a social network, and it was also building on the popularity of Facebook, so it really is not comparable.
Yep, and they forced people to move over as well to use the service. The next fastest would be Chinese messaging giant WeChat, which took 7 years. Then Instagram, which took closer to 8 years to reach the 1 billion user mark. In the US, we estimate that TikTok doubled the number of users from 2019 to today. It's 79 million users that registered this year, 2021. According to our numbers, will reach 85 million next year and close to 100 million by 2025. That would be over 4 out of 10 social network users using TikTok by 2025. That's all we've got time for the game of the week. This week's winner, drum roll, Blake! Bing, bing, bing! Congratulations to Blake. I didn't even see it coming.
I thought that orange card was really gonna...
It nearly held you back.
Sometimes when you play at the very edge, Blake, you win just because you're out there.
He's like the Dennis Rodman of this game. He plays fast and loose with the rules, but he's a winner.
At the end, I'm a valuable asset to the team.
Yes.
Congrats. You get the championship belt and the last word. What you got for us?
Well, having endured such a long dry spell, I totally did not prepare anything to talk about because I thought it was going to be completely inconceivable that I would win.
Me too.
So I don't really have anything, but I will say that I'm very excited for the Many States of Newark movie, the Sopranos movie that's going to come out. So next time I win this game in 6 months to a year, I will happily come on the podcast and let everybody know what I think of the movie when I see it next week.
Blake, I thought you were going to be super excited about Bachelor in Paradise.
Yeah, no comment on that one.
Moving on. Working from somewhere. This is the part of the show where we talk about working from somewhere and how our working lives have changed. This week, we've got 2 articles for you. One on the new corporate dress code, the other on greeting etiquette. We'll start with the new corporate dress code. The pandemic has refashioned corporate dress codes, notes The Economist. It's suits versus sweatpants. And in 2016, things started to move closer to sweatpants at JP Morgan Chase when it relaxed its dress code. The American bank's 240,000 employees could hang up their suits, replacing it with business casual attire that was once reserved for casual Fridays. But don't let me see t-shirts and flip-flops. However, polos and dress sandals are fair game, the article notes. Folks, your thoughts on a new corporate dress code, which could be here. Some people are in the office now, could be coming. A lot more people will go back, I would imagine, once things calm down a little bit further. Your thoughts?
I was very sad about the reference to skirt length in the dress code, and I felt like that was unnecessary maybe. No, I'm not sure. I feel like it made me sad.
I wasn't expecting to see that pop up. Yes. So yeah, what Sue's referring to is they were saying these are the things that are allowed, these are the things that you want to stay away from. Allowed was polos and dress sandals and skirts of a certain length. Not allowed was t-shirts, flip-flops, and shorts. My thought was, part of the article kind of addressed this, which was why? Why are the corporate dress codes changing? You could argue the pandemic, but also they pointed to the Silicon Valley tech giants. They've always kept things casual. They pointed to male-dominated offices of old and no longer being fit for the purpose in a world of greater, though still imperfect, workplace equality. So that shift. And then also interesting, changing commuter habits. As more and more folks ran or cycled to work, they found changing into a full suit was impractical since jackets folded into rucksacks tend to lose their crispness. Any other thoughts on
the one thing I really liked about the article was the idea that when you did dress up to go to work, whatever that means to you, and then you came home and you changed, you had this transition of like work world to home world. And all of a sudden that's blurring because you're wearing the same clothes all day, every day, basically. And that mental shift didn't happen. And if you work from home, you don't even walk home or run home or whatever, however you're getting home. So that transition is missing.
Yep. Mr. Rogers built his whole media empire on that concept of, coming home and changing into his cardigan and kind of getting into more comfortable wear.
I think it was either Gay Talese or Tom Wolfe who they would write from home, but they would put on a full suit every morning when they sat down to write for the day. And I just want everybody to know that that's what I do when I write my eMarketer reports. I'm always in a full suit.
No wonder that's why they're so good.
Blake's wearing a top hat currently.
Yes, and I have a monocle.
Decked out. I don't know why I insist on dressing up like the Monopoly man, but he's done so every episode since this show started. They were saying, unlike JP Morgan, most companies haven't put any guidelines in place as to what is and isn't appropriate. They were saying when the pandemic subsides, do you guys think that male and female professionals will feel a renewed desire to dress up? We kind of saw a bit of that once people could go outside again.
I guess so. I'm still having trouble reconciling this concept of diversity and inclusion and bringing your whole self to work with any kind of dress code, because if you are expressing your individuality through your attire, that really has no boundaries, or maybe it has boundaries, but it has a wide range of acceptable, styles and colors and so forth and lengths. So yeah, it just doesn't strike me as two things that at least I haven't been able to reconcile in my mind.
One of the interesting points here was they were saying a freshly laundered crisp shirt says you've made an effort, a tracksuit does not. And I can relate to that because I wear a hat every day and a t-shirt, and I kind of stopped caring what I looked like after kind of working on the podcast and living in a storage closet for like 2 years. I noticed that no one needed to know what I looked like and no one cared. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But I do wonder if, there's something to be said for, when people dress up, does that transfer into, how much people see you kind of taking the job seriously? Maybe not. Maybe, managers are having to reimagine what productivity means in this new hybrid world. So maybe that will fade.
Well, I think that people should not be judged. So what you guys are saying, 100%. But I think for me, I sometimes like to get dressed up, whatever that means. Everybody has a different definition, because then it makes me feel a little bit more confident. So like when I go on stage to do a presentation, I personally would rather, nobody can see me in my tracksuit and not brushed hair, much to my mother's dismay. But doing a presentation, I would have brushed my hair.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's like, I think dressing up is still always going to be a thing, but it's going to be like dressing up on your terms, right? I mean, I think I do agree with Paul that it is hard to sort of marry those two concepts, like bringing your full self to work and inclusiveness with, the traditional workplace attire. But I do think that there are ways to, I think everybody's at home, at least for the most part. I mean, hopefully this isn't too much of a generalization, but everybody's at home attire is pretty similar, right? I mean, we tend to wear sweatpants, we wear looser fitting clothes that are more comfortable. And then if that's the core part of your personality and you feel to the need to bring that to the work, I suppose that's one example. But I do think the idea of establishing a general tone of professionalism that is more inclusive we could certainly do better on that end, as opposed to the way that things have traditionally been and defined workplace attire.
The article noted some benefiters and some casualties of this change. Benefiters being fashion designers like Giles Deacon in Britain have launched the Work From Anywhere fashion collections. And casualties being last year 200-year-old button-down shirt company Brooks Brothers filed for bankruptcy, and M&S, Marks & Spencer, a British retailer, just said it will no longer sell men's suits in over half of its bigger stores. The second article we were reading for this was about waving goodbye to the handshake from The Economist. The business world's most common greeting is going out of fashion, writes another Economist article. In the 1800s, it points out, greeting an associate in the West meant doffing your hat. A hand may have even been kissed, but seldom was it shaken, a gesture deemed too pally. A recent survey from workfromhomeresearch.com found that before the pandemic, about 60% of men and women, 60, said they shook hands the first time they met a colleague. The backup option for men was a fist bump. For women, it was a verbal greeting. When asked how they will greet folks when they return to work in person, the overwhelmingly preferred option for women, with 60%, was a verbal greeting. Fist bump and handshake were basically joint second, way behind. And for men, 38% will fist bump, 34% will verbally greet, and 28% will handshake. Some very interesting research to me. What do you guys think of this?
Well, that's why I'm always wearing my top hat, so I can tip the hat and I can stay germ free.
I was going to say bring back the doffing of the hat.
And the bow.
And, those things are very culturally specific as well, because if you, in Japan, you bow. Where I grew up in South America, you kiss, or, at least men and women kiss, which is very shocking to some people when it's, when you're not used to it, but that's how it's done.
Yeah. I read this and thought, well, one is that now every time I greet someone who I'm not well acquainted with, I ask them what they're after. So what are you after? You after a wave, handshake, fist bump? Some people want a hug straight away. So I asked them what they're after to try to put them at ease. That seems to have worked best. But then I read this research and thought, okay, well, if this is what men are going to do and what women are going to do, I need to interpret this research and then try to match them. So if women are more likely to provide some kind of verbal greeting, I need to reciprocate. And if men are more likely to fist bump and then verbally greet and then handshake, maybe I need to do that. So it's one thing to know what you want to do, but trying to also mirror what someone else wants to do and make them feel comfortable. It's going to be a very weird time for a long while.
There's nothing more awkward than when you go in for the pound and somebody extends their hand, or the opposite way around, and then you end up doing the weird fist to open hand thing. You ever been in that situation?
Oh, yeah.
I hate that. It's the worst.
Yeah.
And then you're deciding whether to mutually acknowledge that it's an awkward situation or just ignore it.
You got to bring it up.
You think you got to bring it up?
You got to bring it up.
Yeah, I guess you kind of have to. Yeah, you got to clear the air.
Yeah. Who knows how we're supposed to greet each other anymore? That just happened. Then you give a little bow and then you're out. The article was accompanied by a good picture of Angela Merkel, a former Chancellor of Germany, and Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the UK. And I think it was a fist bump to elbow situation.
Exactly right. That's to Blake's point. That looks like one of those awkward moments where she went for the fist bump, he went for the elbow, and something got lost in the translation there.
Yep.
I have to be honest, I haven't ever had the opportunity. Everyone just shakes hands in the stuff that, in the little activity that I've done in real life since COVID. Nobody's even offered to just verbally greet me.
Interesting. And that's how hard is it to say no to someone who's like, can we hug? Or can we shake hands? That makes things really awkward if you say no, talking about kind of getting off on the wrong foot. Yeah, it's a tricky world. Anyway, that's all we've got time for Working From Somewhere. It's time now for dinner party data. This is the part of the show where we tell you the most interesting thing that we recently learned this week. Blake won. He goes first. Go.
This is I found this one pretty interesting. It's a YouGov recent poll from September when they asked, have you ever been in a serious physical fight? So the majority of people have never been in a fist fight, 60%. 23% said yes, they've been in more than one physical fight, and 13% said they've been in a fight, but only one time. And when you break it down into region, this is when it gets really interesting. So the Northeast, they are the most likely to be multiple fighters. So 24%.
Typical.
You got a problem with that?
It's got to be
New England people.
It's got to be Boston and Philly really ramping up those numbers. Let's be honest here. I mean, I'm sure New York too. But all right, I guess it makes sense why. Yeah. I guess what state is not getting into fistfights in this area? Like maybe Connecticut. I don't know. But it's even like Maine, I wouldn't mess with people from Maine either.
You got that right.
Or Vermont. Yeah, exactly. And then the next most likely to be in multiple fistfights was the West. So 27% of respondents said that they've been in more than one fistfight. So I'm guessing that's got to be the cowboy mentality. And then 22% of respondents in the South had been in more than one fist fight, and just 19%, those polite Midwesterners, have only been in more than one fist fight in their lives. But yeah, pretty interesting because this YouGov survey goes deeper into looking at gender, politics, age, income level, and how often these people get into fist fights.
I'm currently in the Midwest. I'm not leaving. Everyone's so nice.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I wonder how many of those fights were precipitated by people misunderstanding what they were supposed to do when they greet each other.
Exactly.
You go for the fist bump, the other guy goes for the handshake, and suddenly that fist bump turns into just a fist.
The fist bump to handshake, that technically counts as a physical altercation, even though it may be good natured, but we count that.
Susie, what you got?
Oh, I can't go next.
Why?
No, I'm just joking. Mine's
have
not
anything?
as exciting.
Again.
No, I do. Okay.
Okay.
There is a study by Numbeo around the cost of living index that includes rent. So it's the cost of living by country, including rent. And 100%, it's indexed 100% is New York City. So admittedly, one of the most expensive cities in the world. Who do we think is the number one country from a cost of living? Most
Switzerland.
expensive. Oh, have you seen this study?
No.
I was going to say Switzerland as well.
A lucky guess.
I was going to say Luxembourg.
That's a good one. Or Japan.
It's Switzerland with nearly 80% on the index of 100. Hong Kong, 78. Iceland, I didn't think Iceland, 75.
Wow. Austria.
Singapore, 72. Nope, Norway.
Yeah. Norway?
Luxembourg comes in at almost 70.
Wow.
Okay.
Ireland, and then Bahamas. So I think probably a lot of these are countries that they're more import, export. And by that, I mean import.
Right.
What's at the bottom of the list? I need to move there.
So unfortunately, the study, I don't have access to the whole thing. so I can only give you the top ones.
Great. Just the expensive
But
places.
if you want to expense getting the study, I will send you the link.
Okay.
Right.
I think Midwest has got to be. Midwest, everything seems to be half price.
Well, it's by country.
Midwest
We'd have
is
to
the
look
country?
for a different study.
Yeah.
The Midwest should be a
Mid-East,
country.
not Midwest.
Very good. Like it. Who's next? Paul.
Okay, so iSpot TV did a study about beer advertising on linear TV in the US. They found that it rose by 50% year over year through August 15th, which I thought was pretty astounding. I mean, there are a lot of categories of advertising that you understand why they would have dropped off the face of the earth in the pandemic. Beer, I don't think would have been top on my list. Two things were interesting about the top 10 beer brands that advertised. One is that first I was reading down this list and not being a connoisseur of the beer industry, I thought, okay, Modelo, Corona, it's interesting brands. But it turns out that 7 of the 10 are Anheuser-Busch InBev brands. So big beer is definitely coming to get you. The other thing I thought was interesting is that 4 of these brands are hard seltzer brands. And I don't know about you guys, but to me, hard seltzer and beer are 2 entirely different things, and I would not put them together that way.
Very good. You say ad spending?
Yeah, TV ad spending.
TV ad spending.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I've got one for you real quick. The Football Huddle. How did it come about? It was invented to help deaf players communicate. The Football Huddle was started in 1894 in Gallaudet University in DC when their football team was playing against another deaf team. Paul Hubbard, the quarterback, didn't want to risk the other team seeing him using ASL or American Sign Language to explain the play to his teammates, so he asked them to form a tight circle formation, now known as the huddle. From then, it caught on across teams because it provided a close-knit space where players could speak quietly and account for all present, and also bolster team spirit.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Thank you, Paul. You genius.
I have to say, though, it takes a lot of guts to play football in the first place, but if you can't hear what's going on, it must be that much harder, and even more props to people who dare do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's what we've got time for today's episode. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Susie.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you to Blake.
Thanks, everyone.
Champion. of the game of the week this week. Thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening in. To ask us questions or just say hi, podcast@marketer.com is where you can get in touch. This coming Monday, October 4th, after the weekend happens, we have a Tech Talk webinar with New York Interconnect on how to create national success for your brand with TV media's local market. Click the link below to sign up. We'll see you guys hopefully on Monday for the Behind the Numbers Daily, the Marketer podcast made possible by New Star. Happy weekends. Susie, did you answer real quick because of what you've done the last couple of weeks? Susie always takes about an hour to say goodbye back to someone, but she answered very quick. You answered uncomfortably quick just then.
I don't know, but did you call Blake son?
Sir.
Oh, sir. Okay.
I was going to say, I'd have to request you edit that out. I will not be sunned publicly.